Welcome to the Invite Health podcast, where our degreed healthcare professionals are excited to offer you the most important health and wellness information you need to make informed choices about your health. You can learn more about the products discussed in each of these episodes and all that Invite Health has to offer at www.invitehealth.com/podcast. First-time customers can use promo code podcast at checkout for an additional 15% off your first purchase. Let's get started.
I think today's podcast episode will be especially helpful for so many people because I'm going to focus today on your sleep and awake cycle, your body rhythms, your circadian rhythms, which are so important to good health and a long life and enjoying yourself. So I'm going to discuss one easy habit that will improve your mood, your daytime energy, and also the quality of your sleep later at night. I will at some point also recommend some supplements that if you've had 1 or 2 nights of poor sleep, how do you get over that? I'm also going to discuss what can help you sleep. You know, some people have trouble falling asleep, other people wake up too early and they can't fall back to sleep, so we'll discuss all that at some point. And I'm going to discuss when is it the best time to exercise every day, especially if you want to lose some fat. And when should you have that first cup of coffee? And when should you eat your first meal of the day, break fast? So welcome to my episode, An Easy Habit for Greater Daytime Energy and a Better Night's Sleep. Hi, my name is Jerry Hickey. I'm a nutritional pharmacist, practicing pharmacy for decades. You can find all of Invite's podcast episodes for free wherever you listen to podcasts, or just go to our website, invitehealth.com. We've got hundreds up there done by different healthcare professionals. You can also find Invite on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Invite Health. All of the information on today's episode will be listed in the podcast episode description. So what is this easy, wonderful habit? When you wake up, as soon as you can, get outside and enjoy that beautiful early morning yellow light. The yellow and blue light outside is so important to good health. This may be the single most important thing for setting your internal clock. For better sleep at night, for better daytime energy, for a better memory, for a greater mood. And the Nordic countries, in Sweden in particular, there's actually a name for it, Yokuta. Yokuta means listening to the birds. When they have trouble with insomnia in Sweden, and it's an issue over there because in the summer they get too much sun and in the winter they don't get enough, they go out and they listen to the birds and they get that early morning sunlight. So why is this so important? It's actually incredibly important because when your clock is off, not only are you fatigued and have a miserable day and poorer memory, but it sets you up for diseases. You just don't enjoy your life and you get sick. So early morning sunlight is really important. And I'll go into all the physiological reasons why during this podcast episode. And light before sunset is important. You don't have to be out there when the sun's sinking into the ocean, but like an hour before, a half an hour before sunset, it powerfully affects your neurobiological pathways and your hormones. And this makes you feel great. It makes you feel better in the day and you sleep better at night. I mean, it's just a way to enjoy your life. So, we have an early morning cycle that wakes us up and sets us up for our upcoming day and our upcoming night. So we're in rhythm with the light and a nighttime cycle, with the sun cycle, with the earth, a 24-hour cycle. We're in sync with that. It's called our circadian rhythms. Every single cell in our body has an internal clock that reacts to this rhythm. And it's controlled by genes in sync with our 24-hour day. So our body literally is billions of clocks. It literally is billions of clocks. So think of how this affects you when you travel, when you cross time zones. So when you fly from New York to Italy, and especially when you fly from Italy back to New York, how terrible you feel. You're not thinking clearly. You're not thinking properly. Your brain just doesn't feel good. You could be fatigued. You can't sleep. You have digestive issues, including constipation. It's easier to catch a cold or get sick. So in the morning, one of the first things we have is a cortisol pulse. Cortisol is usually called a stress hormone, but it does a lot more than control stress. It's part of the immune system. It's part of waking up. It's part of fight or flight mechanisms. It does a lot. So in the morning at sunrise, we have a pulse of cortisol. And this spike in the release of cortisol is in a cycle that raises your body temperature. And that rise in body temperature wakes you up. I mean, think about it. In the fall and the spring, when it's that beautiful cool night, like 60 degrees, and you open the window, you sleep better. Because your body needs to cool down to sleep, but it needs to heat up to be awake. You have to get to your normal body temperature. Now, the maximum level of your body temperature is generally about 3 in the afternoon. And you could kind of get a little sleepy around that point. A lot of people get sleepy around 2 or 3. And then it starts to cool down so that later at night, 9, 10, 11 o'clock, you could go to sleep. So when you have that cortisol release, that cortisol pulse, and the cortisol rises in the morning and it starts to taper off throughout the day, that increases your focus, your mood is lifted, so you're happier, etc. The cortisol has to drop later in the day so you can sleep. So, people who are stressed out, they're inappropriately releasing cortisol non-stop. They can't go to sleep, right? Stress prevents you from sleeping. It's that cortisol. Now, if you don't have the sunlight in the morning, you have a late cortisol pulse. And this can interfere with your sleep. It can cause insomnia, or the lag time to fall asleep is too long, or you wake up too early and you can't get back to sleep. But it can also, it's been proven in human clinical trials that if you have a late cortisol pulse, like these kids that get out of bed at 12 o'clock because they went out the night before, it can lead to depression and anxiety. So get outside early, enjoy that morning light, and it sets you up with that proper cortisol pulse for the body's correct timing, so that your body's in sync with the planet and with our solar system. Now, I generally get up between 6 and 6:30, even though I'm retired. I mean, I'm not fully retired because I do radio and I do podcasts and I love it. It's just, something good for my brain. It's an intellectual pursuit, and it forces me to keep up with the data. So that's good, because I can be a little intellectually lazy sometimes. So I get up 6:30, and I make sure the dog has some food, my friend Charlie, and I'm making sure he drinks some water. And then I take him for a walk, about an hour walk. So by 8:30, I finish my hour walk. I'm not drinking my coffee yet. I can. And that's something important to go into. But I'll go into it after I explain the next hormone or the next messenger that's important in the morning. I don't have my coffee yet. I don't even eat yet. I exercise first, and we'll explain why later. So there's a huge benefit with that early morning sunlight. Now, don't wear like sunglasses. Don't wear something that'll block the blue light in the morning. You need the sunlight. You could wear your contact lenses or your regular glasses, but don't wear sunglasses. Now, besides regulating the cortisol pulse, the cortisol release, that early morning light is picked up by cells in our eyes called melanopsin cells. So besides regulating our cortisol pulse, that early morning light is picked up by cells in the eyes called melanopsin cells. Now these cells pass a signal to the part of your brain that regulates your body. It regulates your hormones, it regulates your internal clock. It's called the hypothalamus. It interacts with the anterior and posterior pineal gland to control the body. So it's a part of your brain that is your timekeeper. It keeps control of your circadian rhythms. And this signals the release of the neurotransmitter dopamine norepinephrine, and epinephrine. So that's important. So in the morning you go out, you get that sunlight, and you're going to release dopamine. Now, most people think of dopamine as a reward and punishment neurotransmitter. A neurotransmitter is these things typically in the brain that transmit a message. You only need a tiny splash of them. Dopamine is key. It's really not a reward and punishment messenger. It's responsible more for motivation, for motivating you to do well, to get the job done, to carry on with your life, to do good, all that. It's involved with desire, so that's very good for you and your partner, right? It's important for pursuing important things, like for me, painting and exercising. It's important for your drive and your ambition. And this is a reason why you feel better when you go out early in the morning, but also why a lot of people get spring fever and why they enjoy the summer and they feel so good in the summer sometimes versus the winter. I happen to love the winter. Because they're releasing the dopamine, because they're getting that cortisol pulse, because they're going outside in the morning. So this forces one part of your nervous system to take over called the sympathetic nervous system. It's really ruling mostly in the daytime. It's important for eating, for thriving, for survival. Now, in the daytime, you start to build up a second neurotransmitter, a messenger in the brain. It's called adenosine. It starts to build up. And later on in the day, this switches you to the parasympathetic nervous system. So it's no longer the sympathetic nervous system. It's the parasympathetic nervous system kind of lowers everything. So it takes over in the evening so you can relax, rebuild, heal, and sleep. So your internal clock is in tune with the sun's phase and the release of cortisol and the release of cortisol to wake up and to raise your body temperature and to get you going, and adenosine to set you up for later in the day when you sleep. But also you're releasing dopamine and other neurotransmitters for proper brain function and drive, etc. So the single best thing for your internal clock is this early sunlight exposure. And I do at least 10 minutes. I happen to get an hour because I'm walking Charlie. But even before walking Charlie, sometimes I just go out front and sit down. The sun's bright out in my front yard, and I just sit out there. Now, let's talk about your first cup of coffee. Okay. Now, I got this data from Dr. Andrew Huberman. Andrew Huberman's a genius over at Stanford University. So he was talking about, in one of his podcasts, when you should have your first cup of coffee. And it made all the sense in the world to me. So having your first cup of coffee too early, all that caffeine, throws off the adenosine cycle. And when you throw off the adenosine cycle, you're not going to sleep perfectly. Because the adenosine cannot clear out of your bloodstream, and it's going to throw off your sleeping. So, according to Huberman, Dr. Huberman, the best time to have your first cup of coffee is 60 to 90 minutes. Wait 60 to 90 minutes after getting up for this particular reason. Now let's talk about eating and exercise. This is me. After I walk Charlie, my dog, so I'm back around 8:30, let's say, I'll have a cup of coffee because I'm already up since 6:30. It's 2 hours. And then I go into my garage. My garage is a man cave. It could be my wife's cave. I don't care. But in there I have a body bag for punching, like a big punching bag. And there I have weights, barbells, and dumbbells. And in there I have a bike. So I go in there and I stretch. And I'm not doing static stretching where you stay in one shape. I'm doing movement stretching to get the blood going to my muscles. Then I sit down the bike and I do generally 25 to 30 minutes. And I'm reading while I do it. I'm reading studies and stuff. But I make sure that I'm really pumping. I keep on checking to make sure I'm not pumping too slow. So I do the bike 25, 30 minutes. On a bad day, maybe 22 minutes. Then I stretch all over again and I lift the dumbbells. Not usually the barbells, usually the dumbbells. I do the barbells when I'm lying down from like my chest. And maybe every second or third day I'll do the body bag. Then I eat. So why that? I mean, if you speak to a good dietitian, they'll tell you this. At night, you're using up your blood sugar. So in the morning, your blood sugar is lower. So if you exercise in the morning, after you get that sunlight or during getting that sunlight, if you exercise in the morning, your body's going to be forced to get the energy from fat. So it's easier, because I have a problem, I gain weight easily. So for me, it helps keep me trim. And then after I exercise, that's when I have my first meal. Break fast. And I don't have like white bread or an English muffin or yogurt or anything like that. I'll tell you a story about yogurt. Recently, my wife brought home some kind of yogurt from one of these big manufacturers that sounded really cool. It sounded like a cool name. It sounded like it'd be a great product. And I looked at it, and it had 19 grams of sugar, and it had a lot of added sugar. It had 2 teaspoons of added sugar per little jar. 2 teaspoons. I don't use sugar at all. If somebody came to my house and asked for sugar for a cup of tea, I wouldn't know where to look. I'm not kidding you. I haven't used sugar probably 40 or 50 years. So I took my wife, we were going shopping the next day, and I took my wife with me. Normally we shop individually, like I'll go for food or she'll go for food. Just, it's more efficient time-wise. I said, let's go shopping together. I want to look at this yogurt. So I looked at all these yogurts, and then I looked at a box of Lucky Charms, which is basically dyed sugar. It's basically dyed candy, right? And the Lucky Charms had less added sugar than the yogurt. Serving a Lucky Charms had less sugar than serving a yogurt. So I kind of have cut out yogurt. It's just hard to find good yogurt, real yogurt. I can't find it. So like in the morning, I'll have an egg. So having one egg every day is healthy. And I'll have very complex bread. It won't say organic wheat. It'll say organic whole wheat. Remember that, okay? Whole. It has to say whole. So let's just use wheat as an example. There's there's wheat, organic wheat, but that's not whole wheat. It doesn't have everything in it. It doesn't have all the fiber. You want to get organic whole grain, organic whole wheat, organic whole oats, something like that, okay? So I'll have a little piece of cheese on that, or I'll have some beans or something. I don't have bacon and sausage and all that stuff. Now, it turns out that we're already a little over time in this podcast episode, so I'm going to have to break this episode down into parts. So the first thing we learned here, perhaps, is try to get to bed the same time every night. It's really good for setting your internal clock. You'll be a lot healthier, you'll be a lot more energetic, and you'll sleep a lot more sound. And try to get up the same time in the morning. So I generally go to bed around 10, maybe 11. If I go to bed later than that, I don't do well. And I get up 6:30. Get outside for at least like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I get outside for an hour. Get that morning light. It'll really set you up for the daytime energy. And let me tell you a trick. If you're getting tired in the day, when you get tired, your eyes are looking down and your head's starting to droop. Look up. Lift your chin up and look up. Lift your eyes all the way up, look up, like at the ceiling or at the top of a tree, because that'll wake you up. So that's a trick if you need, if you're getting sleepy and you have to pay attention, just look up. Now, that'll wake you up. That'll set your brain going with neurotransmitters that'll wake you up and help you focus. So then I don't eat right away. I wait at least an hour before my first cup of coffee so I don't mess up my adenosine pulse and my adenosine cycle. And I exercise before I eat breakfast to burn more fat. Let's stop here, and we'll have part 2 and perhaps even part 3 of this discussion, because this is a very important discussion. When you don't have a good cycle of day and night, when your rhythms are off, when your internal clock, when your circadian rhythms are off, it really is bad for your brain. It's bad for your memory. It's bad for your bones. You build bone at night. You store memories at night. You do a lot of things at night that are so important. Your immune system gets in working order. You're resting everything. You're rebuilding. And also, you have a higher risk of cancer and getting infections when your time clock's off, and having constipation and intestinal problems, and throwing off your good bacteria. So all these things are so important to a good life and health and energy and memory and all that, and living a long, healthy life and being active. So you want to get that in sync. And then I get up 6:30. I get that early morning light. I exercise. Then I eat. So thanks for listening to today's starting of my podcast on a great habit for longevity and health, which is getting up early and looking into that sunlight. You can find all of Invite's episodes for free wherever you listen to a podcast, or just go to invitehealth.com/podcast. You can also find us on Instagram and Twitter and all those things at Invite Health, Facebook, etc. Thanks for listening. Jerry Hickey signing off, and have a great day.